Hello everyone. Today we will be talking about how to negotiate. So, today's topic is negotiation skills. It is quite useful to everyone since there are many occasions where one has to negotiate, be it on personal or professional level. Let's go to the next slide and see the flow of presentation. First, we will see the definition, approaches of negotiation, distributive v/s integrative, negotiation process, negotiation analysis, best negotiation approach and individual differences in negotiation effectiveness. Let us start with definition. A process in which two or more parties exchange goods or services and attempt to agree on the exchange rate for them. The circumstances of negotiation occur when two parties or groups of individuals disagree on the solution for a problem or the goal for a project or contract. Negotiation is a type of discussion used to settle disputes and reach agreements between two or more parties. Generally, a negotiation results in a compromise where each party makes a concession for the benefit of everyone involved. Negotiations occur frequently within the workplace and may occur between co-workers, departments, or between an employee and employer. Professionals may negotiate contract terms, project timelines, compensation, and more. Negotiations are both common and important, so it's helpful to understand the types of negotiations you might encounter as well as how to improve your negotiation skills. Let me enlighten you about the approaches to negotiate. Approaches to negotiation. Most negotiation outcomes will fall into one of two categories, win-win or win-lose. By understanding the different types of negotiations you may encounter, you can determine the most relevant skills for your role and work to improve them. Here are forms of negotiation. Distributive negotiations. Also called distributive bargaining, this form of negotiation occurs when there is a limited amount of resources and each party assumes if they lose something, the other party will gain something. Instead of each party attempting to come to an agreement based on their interests and needs, each party is working to get more than the other party. For example, a client may feel if a provider does not lower the price for a service, they will be paying too much, and the service provider may feel if decrease their price, they will be losing money. Distributive bargaining basics. Play your cards close to your chest. Give little or no information to the other side. The less the other negotiator knows about our interests, the better our position. This can include why we want to make the purchase, our preferences, or the point at which we decline to deal. Expressing eagerness or need reveals a weakness which could be exploited. The opposite is equally true. Try to obtain as much information from the other side as you can. Any further information uncovered is potential leverage to negotiate a better deal. The only information you should give away. The only information we should reveal is the fact we have alternative options. This includes other sellers we can purchase from at a competitive price. Reminding the seller of their competition shows our willingness to walk if necessary. It also lets the seller know there will be no negative consequences for us. Make the first offer. Whatever the first offer is will generally act as a negotiation anchor. This then becomes the point on which the rest of the negotiation will revolve. Try to make the first offer to ensure discussions set off in your favor. Be realistic. Being too greedy or too stingy will likely result in no agreement. So, keep expectations realistic. Integrative negotiations. Often referred to as a win-win, an integrative negotiation occurs when everyone benefits from the agreement. In order to come to an integrative agreement, each party receives some value. The integrative negotiation process may take longer because both parties have to feel fully satisfied before coming to an agreement. For example, if a client believes a provider should reduce the cost of their service to 800 rupees, and the provider believes they maintain the cost of their service at 1000 rupees, the two parties may negotiate to a 900 rupees service. In this case, both parties win 100 rupees. Integrative negotiation basics. Multiple issues. Integrative negotiations usually entail a multitude of issues up for negotiation. In contrast, distributive negotiations generally revolve around the price or a single issue. In integrative negotiations, each side wants to get something of value while trading something which has a lesser value. Sharing. To fully understand each other's situation, both sides must realistically share as much information as possible. This helps each side understand the other's interests. You can't solve a problem without knowing the parameters. Cooperation is essential. Problem solving. Find solutions to each other's problems. For example, offer something valuable to the other side which is of lesser value to you. If you can make this trade while realizing your objective, you have integrated your problems into a positive solution. Bridge building. More and more businesses are engaging in long-term relationships. Relationships offer greater security and the promise of future success. Now, let's go through the negotiation process and understand it in depth. Negotiation process. Negotiation process permeates the interactions of almost everyone in groups and organizations. The essence of the 5 steps of the negotiation process is the actual give and take in trying to hash out an agreement, a proper bargain suitable for all parties. 1. Preparation and planning. Before the start of negations, one must be aware of the conflict, the history leading to the negotiation of the people involved and their perception of the conflict, expectations from the negotiations, etc. Before starting the negotiation, it needs to do homework. What's the nature of the conflict? What's the history leading up to this negotiation? Who's involved and what are their perceptions of the conflict? Moreover, before any negotiation takes place, a decision needs to be taken as to when and where a meeting will take place to discuss the problem and who will attend. Setting a limited timescale can also be helpful to prevent disagreement from continuing. This stage involves ensuring all the pertinent facts of the situation are known in order to clarify own position. It also needs to prepare an assessment of what the other party's negotiations goals are. What are they likely to ask for? 2. Definition of ground rules. Once the planning and strategy are developed, one has to begin defining the ground rules and procedures with the other party over the negotiation itself that will do the negotiation. Where will it take place? What time constraints, if any, will apply? To what issues will negotiations be limited? Will there be a specific procedure to follow in an impasse is reached? During this phase, the parties will also exchange their initial proposals or demands. 3. Clarification and justification. When initial positions have been exchanged, both the parties will explain, amplify, clarify, bolster, and justify their original demands. This need not be confrontational. Rather, it is an opportunity for educating and informing each other on the issues, why they are important, and how each arrived at their initial demands. This is the point where one party might want to provide the other party with any documentation that helps support its position. 4. Bargaining and problem solving. The essence of the negotiation process is the actual give and take in trying to hash out an agreement, a proper bargain. It is here where concessions will undoubtedly need to be made by both parties. 5. Closure and implementation. The final step in the negotiation process is a formalization of the agreement that has been worked out and developing and procedures that are necessary for implementation and monitoring. For major negotiations, this will require hammering out the specifics in a formal contract. Negotiation process has 5 stages. In all steps of a negotiation process, the involved parties bargain in a systematic way to decide how to allocate scarce resources and maintain each other's interests. Let me give you suggestions to improve your negotiation skills. Negotiation analysis, some suggestions for effective negotiating. 1. Analyze and cultivate your BATNA. In both integrative negotiation and adversarial bargaining, your best source of power is your ability and willingness to walk away and take another deal. Before arriving at the bargaining table, wise negotiators spend significant time identifying their best alternative to a negotiated agreement, or BATNA, and taking steps to improve it. 2. Negotiate the process. Don't assume you're both on the same page when it comes to determining when to meet, who should be present, what your agenda will be, and so on. Instead, carefully negotiate how you will negotiate in advance. Discussing such procedural issues will clear the way for much more focused talks. 3. Build rapport. Although it's not always feasible to engage in small talk at the start of a negotiation, particularly if you're on a tight deadline, doing so can bring real benefits, research shows. You and your counterpart may be more collaborative and likely to reach an agreement if you spend even just a few minutes trying to get to know each other. If you're negotiating over email, even a brief introductory phone call may make a difference. This is one of the most valuable negotiation skills to master. 4. Listen actively. Once you start discussing substance, resist the common urge to think about what you're going to say next while your counterpart is talking. Instead, listen carefully to her arguments, then paraphrase what you believe she said to check your understanding. Acknowledge any difficult feelings, like frustration, behind the message. Not only are you likely to acquire valuable information, but the other party may mimic your exemplary listening skills. 5. Ask good questions. You can gain more in integrative negotiation by asking lots of questions, ones that are likely to get helpful answers. Avoid asking yes or no questions and leading questions, such as "don't you think that's a great idea?" Instead, craft neutral questions that encourage detailed responses, such as "can you tell me about the challenges you're facing this quarter?" 6. Search for smart trade-offs. In a distributive negotiation, parties are often stuck making concessions and demands on a single issue, such as price. In integrative negotiation, you can capitalize on the presence of multiple issues to get both sides more of what they want. Specifically, try to identify issues that your counterpart cares deeply about that you value less. Then propose making a concession on that issue in exchange for a concession from her on an issue you value highly. 7. Be aware of the anchoring bias. Ample research shows that the first number mentioned in a negotiation, however arbitrary, exerts a powerful influence on the negotiation that follows. You can avoid being the next victim of the anchoring bias by making the first offer, or offers, and trying to anchor talks in your preferred direction. If the other side does anchor first, keep your aspirations and BATNA at the forefront of your mind, pausing to revisit them as needed. 8. Present multiple equivalent offers simultaneously, mesos. Rather than making one offer at a time, consider presenting several offers at once. If your counterpart rejects all of them, ask him to tell you which one he liked best and why. Then work on your own to improve the offer, or try to brainstorm with the other party an option that pleases you both. This strategy of presenting multiple offers simultaneously decreases the odds of impasse and can promote more creative solutions. 9. Try a contingent contract. Negotiators often get stuck because they disagree about how a certain scenario will play out over time. In such cases, try proposing a contingent contract, in essence, a bet about how future events will unfold. For example, if you doubt a contractor's claims that he can finish your home renovation project in 3 months, propose a contingent contract that will penalize him for late completion and or reward him for early completion. If he truly believes his claims, he should have no problem accepting such terms. 10. Plan for the implementation stage. Another way to improve the long-term durability of your contract is to place milestones and deadlines in your contract to ensure that commitments are being met. You might also agree, in writing, to meet at regular intervals throughout the life of the contract to check in and, if necessary, renegotiate. In addition, adding a dispute resolution clause that calls for the use of mediation or arbitration if a conflict arises can be a wise move. You might be wondering what can be the best approach for negotiation. Let us check this. There is no one best approach to effective negotiation. Integrative or collaborative bargaining is recommended for negotiating rights and responsibilities as opposed to hard economic issues, in which the parties explore options to increase the size of the joint gain without respect to the division of payoffs. The bargaining, or negotiation, follows a joint problem-solving format and to benefit all parties. Parties under integrative bargaining recognize and define a problem, search for possible solutions to it, evaluate them, and select one that maximizes joint gain. The effectiveness of this process depends on parties' willingness to share information combined with open communication. Let us see how individual differences affects the effectiveness of the negotiation process. Individual differences in negotiation effectiveness. These categories can broadly be described as follows. I. Personal background characteristics. 2. Abilities. 3. Personality traits. 4. Motivational styles, and v. Expectations and beliefs. What follows is a brief review of relevant research findings in each of these areas, and some useful pointers on how one can more effectively engage in negotiations taking into account the negotiator's individual differences. Background characteristics. With respect to personal background characteristics, this category encompasses factors such as sex, culture, formal negotiation experience, age, appearance, socioeconomic status, educational level, birth order, height, religion, and masculinity/femininity. Culture. Most of the research regarding background characteristics has been focused on how sex, gender, and culture impact negotiation. The findings in this area are rich, interesting, and complex. What does this mean for successfully navigating intercultural negotiations? The first step is evidently to acknowledge the different values and assumptions differing cultures place on the negotiation process. Not every culture negotiates in the same way. As such, it is necessary for negotiators to adapt to new cultural settings. Gender. With respect to gender, research has shown that differences in perceived negotiating ability of women and men may be caused by beliefs about what personal characteristic individuals ascribe to effective negotiators. That is, many traits generally associated with effective negotiators are viewed as masculine, while many traits associated with unsuccessful negotiators are viewed as feminine. Age. While there have not been any conclusive findings on the impact of age on negotiation success, there have been findings on the impact of how different generations communicate during negotiations. Younger adults produce more words and more gestures when relating content that was novel to the listener. On the flip side, younger, not older, adults conveyed more information in their gestures and speech when there was an absence of common ground. Abilities. The abilities category encompasses factors such as cognitive intelligence, emotional intelligence, creativity, and cultural intelligence. Greater abilities appear to be valuable for boosting win-win outcomes in negotiations. However, the idea that greater ability improves individual success in negotiations has not, to date, been substantiated. When it comes to negotiation, intelligence, the ability to plan, organize, and problem solve seem to be relatively unimportant. Personality traits. With respect to personality traits, psychologists often categorize these traits into 5 variables: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness. Being agreeable has the potential to undermine the necessary pursuit of self-interest in the negotiation process. Thus, if one tends to fall on the more extrovert or agreeable end of the personality trait spectrum, it would be wise, for the sake of the success of the negotiation, to downplay those qualities. Motivational styles. Motivation is critical to negotiation in that it is difficult to imagine anyone entering into a negotiation without some sort of motivational goal. Motivational styles can be classified into 3 broad categories: processual, cooperative, competitive, and individualistic, egoistic. At the core of these styles is a tension between having a concern for oneself, versus the other party. Expectations and beliefs. Having positive expectations or beliefs has been shown to be the single best predictor of negotiation performance. That is, confidence that one can succeed has the strongest effect of any single variable tested across all types of individual differences. By this I would like to end today's session, and I hope it was informative for you. Thank you.